complex. Now I think we're going to have to say, beware of the military, industrial, intelligence, and investigative complex to encompass these bureaucracies.
Globalism, the dying citizen. You cite the widespread belief among elites, quote, that Americans are becoming citizens of the world. An ancient,
A good word in Greek.
an ancient but unworkable idea of cosmopolitanism has reemerged, close quote. An ancient, right, so
Cosmos, universe,
Yes.
polites, citizen.
Got-
Socrates and Diogenes supposedly said it,
okay.
supposedly.
But I think of this idea of citizenship of the world, this idea comes to us because air travel is cheap and easy, because it's very easy to communicate with anybody on the face of the planet who's hooked up to the internet. With WhatsApp, it's free to call Europe. I think of this as technology erasing our sense of citizenship, of nationality. But then Victor says, this is an ancient idea.
Yes.
Explain.
Well, I think what's happened in the last 30 years, what you talk about, the global inclusivity of cell phones and dish TV, jet travel, has been confused that because we all wear tie-dye t-shirts and flip-flops and jeans, whatever country we're in, or we say, okay, man, or the F word, or you can go to Argentina, or you can go to Taiwan and hear rap music. We're all in the brotherhood of man. We're not. As I said, 190 nations, as you read, less than half of them are consensual. So if you confuse this harmony that's a veneer, this similarity, with something existential.
It's only similarity.
It's only a similarity. And so, I'll give you an example. Where it leads to is Secretary of State Blinken asking the United Nations to investigate whether the United States is racist or not. So basically he's telling Americans, I trust an ecumenical body of nations, 60% of whom are not consensual, and they include China that has 1.4 people in camps. And they may have political reasons to find us racist, but we're going to abide by their recommendations, or the Criminal Court, or the Paris Climate Accord. It was summed up by Klaus Schwab, the architect of Davos. Remember him?
Right.
Good old Klaus Schwab. I read some of his books. And he wrote a book, The Great Reset. And if we could just get all of the elites together, a Bill Gates on one side of the table, a John Kerry, and we can get them all here, and then we can decide that there should be an international tax code, which they're going to decide. They did. And then get rid of that Ireland undercutting everybody to get investment, and we're going to get together, we'll have diversity, we'll set quotas for diversity. We're going to run things. It's just like right out of frightening Plato's Republic with these guardians, they're superior people, and they're going to talk down to people, the elite. So, philosopher king.
Victor, mental experiment. Facebook.
Yeah.
2.8 billion users.
Yeah.
So since this country has a population of 330 million, we've got 85% of Facebook users are outside this country. Facebook has offices around the world. It pays taxes in one country after another. Why should the people who founded and run Facebook think of it as an American company?
It's not.
All right. So what should we do about Facebook? Anything?
I think we should say, if you have a competitor like Parler, and I have conflict of interest because I know the founder of Parler and I like her a great deal, but don't try to put her out of business. And we used to treat people like you that were entrepreneurs, brilliant, successful, but mastered or rigged the game. They were called Rockefeller, Carnegie, and we had antitrust laws. So if you say, they're saying to us, Peter, if you don't want to have a Facebook account, and you don't like our censorship, and you don't like that we rig certain news stories, or Google is saying to us, I think 85% of the searches, and we know that they calibrate the searches on some kind of the results on political people, then go somewhere else. Sort of like saying to an African American in 1950, if you're in Alabama or Mississippi, if you don't like my lunch counter, that's a free country, go to that other lunch counter. And he says, well, there is no other lunch counter. Oh, I didn't
help
know
you there.
Yeah, well, if you don't like Facebook, go to another. There is none. You've got a monopoly. You bought out 200 companies. And so they're monopolies.
So can I ask then, is your reading of antitrust at the turn of the 20th century, Teddy Roosevelt, great champion of antitrust, and what's going on at some basic level is ordinary middle-class Americans, who at that stage there were still a lot of farmers. Selma was still being farmed in those days. And they look at J.P. Morgan, and they look at John D. Rockefeller, and they look at Andrew Carnegie, and they say, well, I don't know the details, but that's just too big. That's just not American. It's unhealthy.
It's not bigness or size.
It's not.
It's control of the market by undercutting competitors and forcing them to sell out, or offering them money, or censoring the use of the product according to partisan or political views, or having so much. We used to have this term dark money. Remember Jane Meyer, dark money?
Yes.
What is $500 million of Mark Zuckerberg infused in the 2020 election at particular precincts to enhance the registrar or the balloting work of the government?
So is it a test? Will it be a test for you over the next 5 or 10 years if Americans say, more or less coherently, but if there's at least an impulse to say to Facebook and Amazon, YouTube, we have to control you.
Yeah,
is that sort of a test?
I think we did that with AT&T. We've done that a lot. Why doesn't just Amazon say, you control all of our purchases? You gained $100 billion during the lockdown. Just sell off your books or your kitchenware group to another thing. If they don't, we can do that if we want. But we didn't think this up. We love these companies. And then we discovered something, that they manipulate searches, that they manipulate the order of a search, that they let the Taliban tweet, but not the former President of the United States on Twitter. And so there are active economic, social, and political agendas, and we're not the political one. They are the political one. And they have an agenda, and they're using their power and monopolies for a particular political purpose.
And the correct response is, we're citizens. Don't treat us like serfs.
The correct response is, you do your worst and we'll do our best, and may the best man win. We're the citizens, not you. And we'll see who wins.
Okay. Victor, what is to be done? So here's my thinking on reading The Dying Citizen. Education. If we're going to assimilate people, if we're going to teach Americans the importance of citizenship, education. But the people qualified to educate in this country overwhelmingly disagree with you, right? In our colleges and universities.
I'm speaking at a college campus. I'm glad that you used that euphemism.
Well,
disagree with
it's you and me, Victor. It's you and me. So I mean, that's a special case. What do we make of the declining importance of citizenship to the people who instruct young American citizens?
It's tragic. When we were all in school, we had something called civics.
Yes.
And I remember when I was in first grade, we were taught how to fold the flag and march it. We were taught a whole array. I say we were taught. In my first grade class, there was about 9 who were so-called white and 31 that weren't, and very impoverished. Had about a $4,000 per capita income in Selma, California in 1960. But everybody learned these protocols. And then we learned that there was a tripart government, and then our teacher would go checks and balances. And then we were talked about the crack in the Liberty Bell. And then we were given little bios, and they were not just Lou Gehrig or they were George Washington Carver. Yeah. And they were great inventors, Thomas Edison. So there was this inculcation.
No matter how poor, no matter where your parents came from, you were taught to be an American.
If there was an ideological bent to them, it wasn't racism, it wasn't capitalism, it was middle-classism. And the idea was, this guy came from nothing. The Wright brothers came from nothing. And that's what it was, the middle-class chauvinism, if I could. And that's what we were inculcated in. And then we decided in our infinite wisdom, the more affluent, leisured, and wealthy we are, we were going to make this university. And we said to ourselves, did we, in the 60s, the family is racist, it's sexist, or classist, and the church, and the community, and the government. So we in the university are brilliant people, and we can't be fair or disinterested because the whole society is biased. So guess what? We get to be biased. So we're going to take you, and we're not going to give you Socratic inductive education. We're going to deductively tell you that your heritage, your founding, the nature of your country is toxic. It always was, it is, and it always will be unless you listen to us. So it's an indoctrination. And it levers this effort partly because of globalization on the coast that enriched the coast.
Right.
And that's where the universities are, aren't they? The Ivy League or Stanford, or where we are today, or USC. It's not, I mean, there's great universities in it, but that's not where the power lies. And these globalized people and the wealth, endowment, 30 billion, 40 billion. So they said to us, we're going to indoctrinate you in a very noble way and make you enlightened and better, change human nature. Okay, so they did that. And in the process, people did what? It's a zero-sum game. They didn't learn language. They didn't learn philosophy. They didn't learn physics, math, at the old way. And so they became very confident but very ill-prepared, and arrogance and ignorance about the most toxic combination you can have. If you also add $1.7 trillion in debt that these universities colluded with the government. And they talk about collusion, 1.7 trillion. So these kids are,
student debt.
what are they going to do with a BA from Cal State San Jose in sociology when you owe $80,000? You tell me. And the university jacked up the rate of inflation, the rate of tuition above the rate of inflation annually. Why did they do that?
Victor,